What's going on, everyone? It's Foxxy here, and this time around we're going to be taking a look at the original MotorStorm. This game came out less than a year after the launch of the PS3 system. To be more specific, the system came out in November 2006, while MotorStorm was released in March 2007, in the US, by the way. All of the MotorStorm games were developed by Evolution Studios, who also made the World Rally Championship racing games, as well as their most recent title, Drive Club. If you've seen my reviews before, you know that this is the part where I like to talk about the game's story. MotorStorm doesn't have one, which is perfectly fine for an arcade racer like this. It doesn't really need a story, nor do I think it would have made the game any better had they included one. Racing games, arcade-like or simulator, do not need to have stories to make them great. For example, Forza Motorsports and Gran Turismo don't have stories to their games, with the exception to Forza Horizons, and those are some of the best racing games out there in my opinion. So what exactly do you have instead of a story mode? Well, it's essentially a career mode of sorts, I guess. To sum things up, there is a racing festival going on, and you take part in these races by selecting one of the 3 available tickets from the start. These tickets can consist of only one racing event, or they can go up to 4 races max. You unlock new vehicles and new tickets by earning points. The points are awarded based off what you place in a racing event, like first place is 30 points, second place is 20 points, and third is only 10. There is a multiplayer mode, however, it has since been turned off, so really the only mode you have in this game is the solo play, or I guess the career if you want to even call it that. But I'll talk more about this later on in the review. The graphics are much better than I remembered actually, although maybe I shouldn't say that since when I first played this game, it was on a big old CRT TV, so yeah. Anyway, for the time the game came out, I think it looks really good. The attention to detail is wonderful, especially so on the racetracks. I think they look fantastic. The only negative thing that I can point out is the kind of bad looking fire effects that come out when you use the boost for too long. It's not a big deal, it's actually pretty nitpicky, but whatever, it's just, again, something that I don't really care for. As for the soundtrack, well, it depends on your taste. It's mostly rock and metal with a little bit of electronic music thrown in. You have artists like Nirvana, Kings of Leon, Slipknot, Elite Force, and a handful of others. For the most part, it's fine. I don't love it, nor do I hate it, but again, this is more of a personal preference thing. It all just depends on your taste of music. The engine noises and any of the other sound effects are fine. There's nothing really noteworthy enough to talk about, so we're gonna move on. The gameplay is fun, and quite frankly, using the word fun is the best way to describe a game like MotorStorm. I said this earlier, MotorStorm is an arcade-style racer, and thank God that it is, because if they were to try to go for a more simulator-y route, I think this game would have been a horrible disaster. The controls are very basic, and the steering is tight and responsive. The only thing worth pointing out about the controls, I guess, is that you have a boost ability. I mentioned this earlier, and if you use the boost for too long, then your car will explode, so you gotta be somewhat careful on how you use it. There are 7 different vehicle classes in this game, ranging from big rigs to dirt bikes and even buggies, each of which handle completely different based off whatever surface that you're racing on. So if you're using a bike, you'll want to avoid going into the mud and stick to the higher grounds, while if you're using a big rig or even a mudslinger, the mud is the place you want to be. I believe there are 5 different surfaces in MotorStorm, and each racetrack has multiple passageways to suit whatever class of vehicle that you're using. While yes, you technically could take whatever passageway you want, just be aware that if your vehicle hates that particular surface that you're racing on, you're going to be at a noticeable and nasty disadvantage. The difficulty of the game seems to primarily center around what vehicle class you are using on what track. You have to take that into consideration, because if you're using a vehicle that hates mud and the track has no mud, then you're golden. But sometimes the game in career mode forces you to use that same vehicle on a track that primarily consists of like 90% mud. So while there are times where the game will be easy as hell, there are also going to be times where getting through a track in first place is going to be an absolute nightmare. When you slam into large rocks, walls, or any large solid object, your vehicle will explode and it'll take like 5 seconds or so for you to respawn. This is another thing that will make the game a little frustrating, because you could easily go from first place on the last lap to 5th or 6th very easily, just because you made a little mistake and hit something you shouldn't have. If I remember correctly, the Burnout games were like that too. I should point out that all of the vehicles in every single class, stats-wise, are exactly the same. No 2 bikes, 2 ATVs, or whatever are different from each other except for how they look, which is kind of disappointing because there's no excitement about unlocking new vehicles, since stat-wise, they're all exactly the same. You cannot perform upgrades on your vehicles either, and this is fine, that doesn't bother me at all, but the whole every vehicle in a particular class being carbon copies of each other just sucks. To me, it makes the developer come across as lazy. Maybe they didn't do this because it would be way too difficult to balance both the classes and every single vehicle per class? I couldn't tell you. While I'm on the subject of complaining about laziness, the biggest negative for me about MotorStorm is the lack of game modes. In fact, you only get that one mode, the career mode. You don't have a single race option or a quick race option like 99% of all racing games out there have. So if you want to race on a particular track with a class of vehicle that you want, you actually have to beat it in career mode first, and then go back to replay that same event. After a large amount of critics and players complained, they ended up putting a free Time Attack DLC on the PlayStation Store. And that's okay, I mean whatever, but I'd much rather prefer a single race type event over a mode like Time Attack that I very rarely play in any racing game out there. It's just not my thing. I'd rather play with other people, whether they're real or computers. Unfortunately, there are only 8 racetracks in this game. The DLC expansion will add another 4 tracks if you choose to spend the money on it. Even though the number of tracks are small, the good thing is that all 8 of them are very unique, and none of them felt all that similar to each other. My 2 favorite tracks are Rain God Mesa and Rock Hopper, while my least favorite would definitely be Dust Devil. It's not like it's even that bad of a track, I just find the design of it annoying. I mean, there's a lot of small objects that are on the road, and I end up crashing into them all the time. And it doesn't help that I believe it's the longest track in the game. Not that I dislike long tracks or anything, it's just that Dust Devil isn't fun for me, so being that it's also a long track makes it that much more miserable. Alright everyone, there's not much left to say about the game without rambling on and on, so let's get to my final thoughts. MotorStorm, for what it's worth, is a fun game, and I do like it. However, it's not something I can see myself playing all the time. MotorStorm does have great ideas, however the massive lacking in variety in the modes and the less than stellar career mode kind of brings everything down. You can pick up this game at GameStop currently for just $1. So if you are interested in this game by my review, or just from watching the gameplay, then I say go for it, because obviously this won't break the bank, so to speak. If you end up not liking it, then who cares? It was only $1. So that's it everyone. Of course, I want to thank you all very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video.